Hello and welcome to the Athletic NBA Show. It's Friday, and I think I'm still Dave DeFore. That means it's Nerder. She wrote, joining me as they do each and every week, Seth Partnow and Mo to Kill. What's up, guys?
I don't think you're Dave DeFore.
It's hard to tell because this week, I've not watched basketball for a few days. I've been watching all these old movies. We had a whole breakdown that did not get recorded where we talked about The Accountant. And Ben Affleck is very good in action movies. That's not for the podcast. Yeah, oh man, yeah. A lot of movies. We remembered a bunch of movies. That's what we did. This is what guys do in the off season. Oh man, what a great week, guys. What a great week. This is the first time we've had a chance to talk since the Nuggets won the title. We saw this coming for years. I think we all predicted it. Don't go back and check the pod. Please don't. No fact checking. I think we were all just dead on with this. Never doubted. I know. Seth actually did never doubt, and Seth did choose the Denver Nuggets to win the title. So congratulations to only Seth.
To make the finals. To make the finals.
He didn't have the guts. He didn't have the guts. Michael Malone, go after his
Gave him a pat on the head.
Alone.
No,
Gave him a pat on the head.
I picked them to lose to a team who the city started with MI. It just the next letter was L.
It's just some home cooking there from Seth. Yeah. But yeah, the Nuggets win the title. They do it by playing pretty good defense and having, one of the just most ridiculous offenses I can remember. And that was fun. So now that the playoffs are over, the season is done. We're thinking about next year. The draft is a week away. I'd like to circle back and ask you guys the question that we like to close every year with. What did we learn this year, guys? Did you guys pick up anything new on the sport, on the league, on Nikola Jokic, anything? What did you guys learn?
I think the kind of the same old lesson, but a little bit of a different twist to it for me, just in terms of I always preach versatility on offense and everything that you need. But I think you also need to diversify your shot selection. And I'm looking at the Boston Celtics, who lived by the three and died by the three for the most part. And it wasn't even so much, hey, we're not shooting it so well. When they didn't get enough attempts up, they were in trouble. And that led to them that's what led to them getting knocked out by the Miami Heat for the most part in that regard. That and Jaylen Brown still doesn't know what his left hand looks like. But I think just diversity of shots across the board and not being able to just, cool, teams take this away, we need to be able to do this. All right, they take that away, we need to be able to do that. And it goes back to what I always say about versatility. But I think you need to diversify your shot selection across the board as a team and be able to honestly live at all three levels. Because at a certain point in the playoffs, you're going to have to live at some of these levels. And I think that's really important there. And that's kind of one of my biggest takeaways from the playoffs.
And it's funny because we do think about that for the individual, right? Like when we think about, Michael Jordan, 3-level scorer, Steph Curry, 3-level scorer, but it's maybe a concept that we haven't thought as much of for just teams generally, because we have gone to this, it's one guy or maybe two guys, and then everyone else spaces out. Maybe they cut, they're not doing very much.
I think that's, if you can get good threes, shoot them all. I think where Boston ran into trouble, and it's still the same basic point, Mo, is that the way they could get to their offense, they could get to their stuff, became very limited. And it was something that looked like it could be a strength of theirs all year in terms of being able to put the ball in different guys' hands and be able to create. And it turned out that most of those guys couldn't reliably create against a locked-in playoff defense. Was it the shot? Was it how they got there? It's probably some of both. But the difference between them and, the Nuggets and the Heat, if we're going to pick two, in terms of the different ways that they could get to shots, was not just where the shots were, but how the action, the initiation of their offense.
Yeah, but I also think you have issues with teams trying so hard to find that good three. They're missing the good twos, and they're missing good opportunities across the board there. with that stuff. And I agree with you. Yeah, if you get 40 wide open threes, 50 wide open threes, you better shoot all of them.
Well, that's what Miami did against
No,
Boston.
but I'm saying like, but you got to find, but like, you can't just specifically hunt for threes and you're only going to take the good ones. And then you end up in bad shot selection at the end of the clock because now you're up against it because all you did was look for shots around this perimeter and never you maximize the full court and you maximize the stuff inside the 3-point arc. And I think those are the things that I think teams are so hung up on this. And I haven't looked at the numbers, but I'd be interested to see all the 3-point attempts for all the previous champions. I'm sure some of these teams like the Warriors, we always talk about them being a high 3-point shooting team. It's not quite always there, but like I'd like to see the attempts of all of that in terms of that for even just the runner up as well. Like I think this is one of those things I think we gotten too hung up on. Let's hunt for good threes at the point of like, but we're not going to have good offense.
And to your point, there's two teams that can both operate out of the low post. Offensively, they can run actions out of the low post. Bam Adebayo does a lot of stuff there. Jimmy Butler did a lot of stuff there. Obviously, Jokic is one of the greatest post-up guys in NBA history. I wonder if that isn't maybe part of that, right? Like it's this, not only do we have guard play and we can play around the perimeter, but we have post play. And this is sort of this is where we want it to be. I mean, I personally like post-ups. I know that it's inefficient, but I like post-ups. I like seeing a game that's not the same thing. It's not spamming spread pick and roll, for 48 minutes a game. So I wonder if that isn't part of it. I mean, Seth, I should have sprung this on you before the show, but maybe we look at rate of post-up, per game or whatever for these two teams. Because I'm curious there, if maybe that's it. It's just having effective low post players in particular just makes a big difference for them.
I think having multiple pitches. I think this is another way of restating the difference between the regular season and the playoffs is you show up, you play someone on Tuesday, you play someone else. You're a reliever coming in to throw 2 innings in that situation. You got a plus fastball. Maybe you have one other pitch. That's enough. You try to be a starter who goes 7 innings with just that. Get figured out pretty quick by the second and third time through the order. And so it's having those other things you can do just is important across the playoff series, unless like the one thing is so good. And I don't really know that, especially as like LeBron and Steph and KD have all kind of maybe slightly aged away from their peak. I don't know if there's a player in the league that has the one thing where there's nothing you can do. You got to get the ball out of their hands. For it to be like reliably super high value over and over and over again for 7 games. So I think having the ability to do the different things like Denver, they had the Jokic, but they had Jokic in the post. They had Jokic running DHOs. They had Jokic handling the ball in pick and rolls. They had Jokic Murray with Murray handling the ball. They had Aaron Gordon rim runs. They had they had split action with like all these different ways. And then if stuff broke down, the ball ends up in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's hands, end of the clock. That's not ideal, but he can make a play.
And he can actually shoot the mid-ranger. Like they actually run, they get every single guy on the court involved in actions on the move. It's not just stationary. Every single one of those guys have plays called for them where they're catching the ball on the move, doing something, including Jokic, which is just, that's what you want out of a big.
But I think that's the important thing there, Dave, too, is just having multiple guys that can do stuff. Right. And in a pinch have to do something, and Bruce Brown hunting Duncan Robinson. Okay. You can't hide Duncan Robinson anymore and things like that. But I just think that's one of the bigger lessons I've just learned in this playoffs is just, I feel like teams kind of got too locked into their shot profile without, and we're so rigid with that it hurt them. That even though they might have been great at those shot profiles, as soon as the defenses were able to start taking that stuff away, and we know defenses respond differently in the playoffs and in the regular season, you started to see the teams crumble. And I think that's kind of the case going forward, really the rest of the way for the playoff. I mean, every team in the playoffs over the next few years. and why the
anything?
regular season matters.
It does.
Because you got to build that stuff into it.
Today's show is brought to you by Front Door. Download the Front Door app and get a free video chat. We all have that long, incredibly nagging home to-do list that we keep putting off. It's full of annoying stuff that just needs to be fixed. A dripping dishwasher, hole in the drywall, or maybe your dryer is not actually drying your clothes. Well, wouldn't it feel great to get all that done? Well, now you can, and it's easier than ever. Introducing Front Door, the all-new one-stop home repair and maintenance app. Front Door lets you video chat with experts in real time so you can diagnose the problem faster. Sometimes you can fix it yourself on the video chat, or Front Door will send you a list of vetted and trusted pros to come out and help solve the problem. With a Front Door membership, it's easy to cross things off your home to-do list and enjoy that feeling of done. Download the app now and get a free video chat with an expert to start solving your problems today.
One small thing. I think we're going to see a lot more teams load up on big men knowing that they have to go through Jokic. I think
Good luck.
Good
luck.
But this finals run, not saying they could stop them. They're not going to find a big man that could stop them. But just more importantly, this finals run has employed several big men who are probably out of the league. Wouldn't be shocked if Dwight Howard ends his way back into the league, because some team's going to say, hey, we need another big off the bench minimum type deal for whenever we play. Remember when teams were stockpiling on wings? I think we're going to see teams stockpiling on bigs, because that was Miami's problem, right? Like they come in with Cody Zeller.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I don't want to put the club in the bag, because then it's like, well, we got the backup big to throw at it. Might as well use him. And then it's Cody Zeller, and he plays, 90 seconds at the start of the fourth quarter, and the game completely turns, and away we go. The funny thing is, before we started, we were like, you know what? Let's put the finals to bed quick and then move on. We've been doing this for 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, let's put the finals to bed and move on. And because this is how things work, guys, we're already thinking about the future. That's how we have to operate. And specifically, I think Denver and Miami have interesting summers coming up. I want to start with Miami just because I think they're the team that needs more if they want to get back to the finals next year. I mean, they had a great run, but this was not a great team by any stretch of the imagination. We all have, sort of tended to agree that they had less talent than the majority of their opponents along the way, which is part of why they were such a great story. Bradley Beal availability notwithstanding. I mean, they are a team that I'm assuming is looking to bring in a Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard sort of guy to pair with Bam and Jimmy, because the issue that they had was offensive consistency. They got great performances from Strus and Caleb Martin and Gabe Vincent, but eventually it kind of ran out. And this is what the Stars that's what you pay them to do.
Yeah, this is a funny conundrum for them, because we saw it a little bit with the I think we all agree that on net, the Tyler Hero injury turned out positive for them over the course of the playoffs, and maybe in the finals it would have been the other way. But maintaining that identity, that culture, if you will, that defensive, physical, grindy culture that allows them to maximize their talent, bring in a guy who is a more of a score first guy who doesn't compromise that. I don't think from a toughness standpoint, a guy like Lillard would, he's just bad defensively. Some of the other names that have been mentioned is like, is that really a Heat player? And so it is kind of a conundrum, because you have to improve at the thing you're best at, but not sacrifice the stuff you're already good at too much to get there. And that's a really, like, mechanics and salary cap and assets aside, that's an interesting philosophical conundrum.
Yeah, no, I think they're really are in that tough spot of like, okay, we need to level up. There's no question about it, right? And it's going to be funny because I just talked about defense for so long. Like, they need to improve their offense and bring that up to another notch. And I think that's the important thing for them. And I think, yeah, listen, they've been big game hunting for a long time. They've kind of been, hey, we're interested in Kevin Durant, which like, okay, no shit, who isn't? But like even last year, and I think, there was Donovan Mitchell. Like they know they've needed to add another kind of scorer type guy. I think the Beal thing is going to be really interesting for them. I think I'm kind of just with Seth. I don't know if Seth's really thinking this or not, but like, I think you got to move Hero. I think if you're going to bring in another scorer, I think that's you're really kind of your best chance to do it with that stuff. And I think you need to go with Bam can't be your number two. That's the other thing I learned in this playoffs, right? Is Bam can't be your number two. He's a third option type guy. Unbelievable defensively, third option on offense. And I think they need that number two guy. Or even at times, that number two guy needs to become a number one. And I think that's why you need to go find a guy like Beal or Dame or something like that. Like they have to go big game hunting. And I think that's an important for them to get to this level next year or close to it. They got to go get a guy like that. They can't take that. And as Seth was saying too, they got to be careful because they've built a certain culture and that guy has to fit that culture. And, like, let's just be honest. Kyrie ain't going to fit that culture.
Well, maybe. You never know. I mean, you never know until a guy gets somewhere. We can make assumptions.
No, I'm going to make the assumption on Kyrie.
I don't know.
I'm going to make the assumption
not to.
on Kyrie. No.
Anybody can change. But I will say, the
least dependable guy who's looking for PTO in his contract is not a Miami Heat player.
PTO into contract. That's a good idea. I will say, so you that's a great point that you mentioned. The luxury that Denver has with Jamal Murray and even Michael Porter Jr. is that those guys can go off and be the best guy on the court at any time. And that was the difference, I thought, for, these two teams. But Tyler Hero's contract extension kicks in. 4 years, $120 million for Tyler Hero, right? So he's a little bit harder to move, but I mean, he's young. He can score. Can he go be a high volume guy for a team that, is looking to, I don't know, add a young guard?
I'm glad you brought up MPJ in the context of this, because what we were, as Mo was talking, I was thinking the things we learned is that the sort of that smaller, poor defensive scoring guard archetype, it's not something we haven't seen before. I mean, Jordan Clarkson is a previous example of sort of someone who's been a very effective regular season player who gets hunted in the playoffs. And we're talking about Tyler Hero, we're talking about Jordan Poole. Blazers didn't make the playoffs this year, but Anthony Simons probably falls into that. CJ McCollum probably falls into that a little bit. And you contrast MPJ with Tyler Hero. Porter Jr. could not make a shot in the finals. If Tyler Hero or Jordan Poole or whoever else goes through a stretch where they are shooting that poorly, is there any way you can see any of them contributing? I think Mo and I were talked about this a lot on our playbacks. Is okay. He's not making shots, but he's making plays. He had a rough game too, especially in the finals. But MPJ made plays because, I mean, part of it is just size and athleticism, but was able to affect the game without doing that. And I think that's, a lot of the scoring types that Miami could bring in are the ones that, if they're not scoring, what are they giving you?
Well, not to go too deep into what we do at Sports Business Classroom, but this is one of the things that we teach in scouting is that if you can watch a guy play offense and stop the tape, but before you see the ball go in, how do you feel about him defending? Right? It is amazing how much that ball going in for Michael Porter Jr. colored what people saw on defense. And he did have some bad defense early, but his length, he just used it. And this is the thing that I think Miami is lacking, obviously the size, but also the length on the perimeter. And it's amazing because their defense is still really good. And Bam is incredible. But wouldn't it be if they could get Mikal Bridges? Like we keep thinking about Bradley Beal, but if Mikal Bridges was available, Cam Johnson is going to be out as a restricted free agent. So I don't think that they can get him. But Dorian Finney-Smith is a guy that comes to mind. And now, you run into the offensive issues, but if we're looking for two-way guys, I mean, they need a guy who can dribble, yes, but I think they need another guy or two as well. Excuse me. That's a lot of twos.
They'll need to kind of supplement their roster here a little bit. We'll have to see what they're going to do with Gabe Vincent, and who's a free agent. They're going to have Caleb Martin coming back. We'll see, with all that stuff, but Yeah, I mean, sure, but I think their first focal point is like this isn't a team that needs to, oh, we just fell short. We need to build around the margins. It was a more at like one point, like, holy shit, the Miami Heat made it to the finals. Like, like if we told you that I told you that after they lost to Atlanta, the way they lost to Atlanta in that first play-in game, you guys would have thought I've lost my mind. And you wouldn't have been wrong. Like the way how bad they looked in that sense. They need to make a big splash first and then figure out the rest later. And I think, the Nets are interesting because they have all of those wings. So who knows what's going to happen there? They can't possibly have all of them going into the season. But I think for them, like, yeah, I think their first job right now is let's just take a massive swing here.
I think that the thing you would say about Miami is you do have confidence that they will have an honest enough self-assessment that they're not going to think that we started the finals again last year. And we've seen other teams do that and think, well, we just think around, blah, blah, blah. No, we made the finals. We have to get much better. I think we can take that on faith that Miami will go into the offseason, not just thinking we need tweaks. We need to get much better. And so they, instead of like a team like, I'll name names like the Hawks and Mavs the last 2 years who think, we kind of made the conference finals. We had some decent fortune and path, but we played well. We're a conference finals now. We can build from that instead of assessing, we're short in these areas. And I think Miami will do that. So, so they will give themselves the best chance to make the moves you're saying they need.
Okay. Well, how about the Denver Nuggets? Can I ask you guys a real question? Okay. This is one of the most serious questions I've ever asked.
Uh-oh.
Can they win 70 games next year? Like, are they that sort of team? Like, is this a team that comes back like the 2016, just foot on the gas? Hey, we did it once. We got a taste of it. And now we want to just crush. Now, I know that it's not the same league when it comes to regular season, but they were just the 1 seed. Feels like they figured out a lot this year. They could do it. Or I'm asking, could they do it?
I think it's almost as much for reasons of like personality as anything else. Say no.
I mean,
so far, like that would be like basically like if Jokic was more like, F you, I'm putting heads up on the mantelpiece from now until whenever, maybe. But he's not. It's not like. This isn't like he's getting portrayed as like happy-go-lucky, doesn't care, and that's not it. But he's not like I don't think he's motivated by spite in the way you need to be to like come out and just like, what, we are setting records, we're silencing doubters. So I
thought the Warriors did that 73 win season on joy. I did not think that was.
Oh no,
yeah,
no. That 73 win season was brought to you by Doc Rivers. And him running his mouth about how the Warriors were lucky, because that's where that shit came from with them. That's what led to that. That's what pissed them off, because then they started feeling like, and that's a petty ass group over there. Not just Draymond, man. Steph Curry, all of them, petty. And I think that's one of those things. It took one line from one coach in the Western Conference, and it led to them going like, oh, you think that?
To their detriment, I would say, in their quest for winning the title.
This is why I was asking, could they, not will they? They won't, because there is no benefit to going for that, I don't think, like long term.
But
I'm trying to get a sense, what level do you put the Nuggets on as far as recent champions? Like, is this a team that you expect to be in the finals again next year? Or is this a team that, if they're the 1 seed, okay, yes, but they might have a tough road to get back?
I think it's more likely, like the odds are higher that they can get back. I don't like saying it. I expect them to be back there next year because we do this all the damn time.
We go straight to the dynasties, man.
But not even that. We do this with teams that just show a spark and say they got next. We do this all the damn time without respect of just how damn hard it is to do it. It is possible, and I'm not saying it's going to happen. It is possible the Nuggets never make it to the finals again in the Jokic era. It's in the cards, and it's not anything to do with that. The league changes so damn quickly now that, like, Seth talks about a hallway. Man, that hallway is tiny. Like, that thing's just shortened just by pure purpose of just shit happens. Other teams rise, other teams get better. This team, I was with the Clippers. We were supposed to be next. All of a sudden, these Golden State Warriors showed up, and it's in that.
But they were just lucky, Mo.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think, but that's kind of that. That's why it's so hard. But I think here's the thing: this team has everything they possibly could need for next season, and I like what they're doing now. Making that trade with OKC during the finals to load up on draft picks, kind of preparing a little bit for the fact of like, yo, we need to have some of these things here. We're gonna need to build up our roster, and it might need to come from development and so on and things like that. I like the stuff that they're doing, like the way they're thinking. They're thinking as a team that wants to be back next year. So not gonna say I expect them to, but I think they're definitely, they're right up there. There's no reason to think they're not going to be. They should be.
I think they've got
as
the best
favorites.
odds. Yeah, they have the
should
best
be counted
odds.
as the favorites.
But to Seth's point that he made earlier about figuring out stuff, right? Like, they figured out that Christian Brown is a player for them next year, right? If they wind up having to lose KCP, you can envision a scenario. Okay, well, that probably means they can hang on to Bruce Brown, but they've got Christian Brown and what he just showed in the playoffs. Going forward, okay, that's a guy we have. And they also, I think, are going to be an appealing option for veteran free agents. I mean, if you wanted to ring chase, is there any better situation than what's happening in Denver? Super stable, selfless star who's a center, which is amazing. Good offense, good defense. I mean, it's just like a good place to walk into. Seems like Michael Malone is a good coach to play for. I mean, and I'm not, let me just pull a name out of a hat. Like, if you were Chris Paul, for instance, and hadn't won a ring, would you be willing to go back up Jamal Murray in Denver and, give them one of the things that they could use?
I mean, just because you can get all those guys doesn't mean you should necessarily take all those guys. I think that's the other thing. Talking about Miami kind of being selective and making sure they get the right guys is kind of the same thing for Denver. I mean, Denver made a trade, basically told Bones Highland to get the hell out of there. Like, that was, one of those instances in that regard, and it probably helped the team in the way they went going forward. But yeah, I think, listen, Jokic is going to draw in a lot of guys. People are going to want to play with him because he's going to make you money. He's going to find you shots. You're going to, as long as you play, you cut, you work hard, you'll get opportunities within the Nuggets just off Jokic's genius. And I think that's an important aspect of it. But the one thing too that I find interesting though, like, just because you found out stuff this year doesn't carry over to next year. Next year presents its whole set of problems. It's part of the problems that they might have to face. What happens if Michael Porter Jr. says, I want a larger role? I want more shots. I want this. There's, I mean, the disease of more. Yeah, of winning. Right? Like, when you win, it changes things a little bit. Okay, I got my championship. Now I want my stats or whatnot, or who knows how that changes, guys. I don't know. We'll find out, but that's right. Part of the stuff they're going to have to discover next year. If they change at all, maybe they don't.
I was thinking this was going to be this like super optimistic podcast, and Mo is just absolutely pouring gasoline on a fire here.
I do want to.
This might fall apart.
Well, no, I do want to give more reasons for optimism about the Nuggets.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I think that. It's a number. How many of the guys who might be in the situation to want more have talked very openly about kind of the struggle they've had, whether it's, Aaron Gordon being miscast in a role, whether it's MPJ and Murray with their health issues. So I think that there's, despite, a little bit of youth on the team, and maybe they're just saying what we want to hear. That's always possible. But I think that this is a group that by and large appreciates kind of how great what they have is in terms of everyone pulling together and everyone being put in the best position to succeed. And you know what? We can all eat. If we all play our parts, we can all eat. And I do think that they have, if you do want to make a comparison to the Warriors, I think there is that sense of everyone is in a spot where they feel like they're contributing and aren't necessarily going to be agitating for. Aaron Gordon doesn't want to be the number one because he's tried that and it sucks.
I'm not worried about him.
Yeah.
Let me just put it to you that way. But also, hey, what if somebody throws a massive contract at Bruce Brown? Right. And he was an important piece. Like, what if small things like that happens? What if the guy you bring in we're going to go out of our way to find the backup big or whoever it may be, and things don't work. I was just saying, like, I'm not even trying to be negative. And more importantly, and this is something Denver fans, I want you to hear this, and I want that the Nuggets don't listen to this, but like, more importantly, enjoy this. Have fun with this. Don't worry about next season. Have fun the next 3 months.
I don't think Nuggets fans are listening to any of our. Yeah. They're not listening to this podcast. I think they're all still out. I mean, the parade. We'll
get to it
Thursday.
Yeah, they'll get to it.
Parade, which, by the way, I just gotta say, man, couldn't have pushed the parade to Saturday so that like people could be off from work.
Did you not see Jokic? Did you not?
I know he wanted to go, although he had a good time. I will.
I'll tell you this much though. You don't need to push the parade. Your bosses need to understand it's a championship parade. We're going to party. That's simple. Your bosses in that city got to say, hey, office is closed. Get your asses to the parade. Yeah. Like, that's more important. So,
and the Broncos haven't won in a long time. So you can't even blame this on football. Like, no, man, like the Nuggets, they won a title. It would have been.
The Avs won recently. But so Calvin Booth, like, gave actually that's a nice little gift he gave to the fans, is if you were stopping to think about it, and it's just like, no, we can enjoy this. The front office has got this. They're already thinking we haven't even won the championship yet, and they're already thinking about it. They got this. I'm gonna throw beers to KCP up on the parade float.
And just because I know it sounded like I was negative, I'm just saying it's more. There's a possibility of like this. I don't want to award next season to anybody in that sense, and let's just enjoy the moment.
And also, I think they have moves to make though. But I want to get that before
that's July shit.
The show. Yeah.
No, but I think awarding them is also disrespectful to the other teams. Yeah, because there's a lot of other good teams that are working hard, and if things had broken a little differently for Phoenix, if LA,
the Clippers, if Kawhi had stayed healthy during that series, what is it like? Could the Clippers have beaten Phoenix? Like, maybe, I don't know.
If the Lakers
brought
had
up
started
the negative word for me, the Clippers, I just can't believe this anymore of them staying healthy. We say this every fucking year.
Yeah, I know.
When I say it was funny though, at the start of the year we were talking about that, and I do think I said, "Hey, shouldn't we be saying the same thing about Denver?" Anyway, but no, I was saying the Lakers, if they just started the year with a sensible roster, so they could have got to the trade deadline and made tweaks instead of having to, oh shit, let's get a sensible roster at the trade deadline. That's part of appreciating this. Is it was hard. They made it look easier than perhaps it was. It was hard, and it's going to be hard again next year because, as Chuck likes to say, them guys getting paid too. And there's a lot of very good, very professional teams that are going to be gunning for them next year. And so we can't award that to them because those guys have something to say too.
Okay, well, I think that kind of wraps things up for Denver and Miami for the year. Put a bow on that one. Before we go, just in case, because this sometimes happens, got some news out of New Orleans. Our Shams Charania has reported that the New Orleans Pelicans have parted ways with Teresa Witherspoon, who is almost, I don't know if we can call her Zion's personal coach, but they have a very close relationship. And guys, I want to just bring this up because it did just happen like right as we were going to record. And it seems like there's a lot of trade chatter surrounding Zion the last week, 10 days or so. And I feel like I just want to talk about it because the number 3 pick in Portland is absolutely fascinating. I think it's one of the most fascinating trade chips sitting out there right now because Portland could very easily use that pick and maybe even just say, hey, we're going to pivot away from Damian Lillard. Or they could use that pick and maybe Anthony Simons or, Yusuf Nurkic contract and go out and get someone to come in and play with Damian Lillard. So they are at a serious pivot point. The Zion stuff, there's just so much noise, so much smoke right now. Am I overthinking this by thinking that Portland and New Orleans may be trying to figure something out here?
It's fascinating because it's the kind of trade that makes you go, yee, from both sides, which is the kind of thing that also makes you say, that might actually be a very interesting kind of fair. You can see why each team would do it. And each team is taking a gamble, but from their respective situation, it might be a gamble worth taking. If Portland, take it as facts on the ground, assuming they were trying to trade for Zion, they're going all in for the remainder of Damian Lillard's tenure as a star. However, whether that's a year, 3 years, whatever. Taking that as a fact on the ground, what better move is there for you? Like Zion Williamson has shown like all NBA level ability when he's been healthy. But that's the gamble you're taking. Maybe New Orleans doesn't want to be in that particular business anymore. You can kind of see why their two best players have been injury prone and unable to really coexist super well in Zion and Brandon Ingram. I would, if I had to choose between them, I would obviously pick Zion. But if I'm going to break that up and I can get a Scoot Henderson to kind of reset that timeline a little bit, to maybe get a little healthier version of the same sort of level of talent, even if not the same kind of body type or position, that's fascinating to me. Like there are going to be some long meetings in both places if that's what they're talking about. Because I just you don't know, and it's a big swing, but man, it's fascinating.
It's a huge swing for both teams. It's one of those things where it's like, this might work out amazing for one team, might work out win-win for both teams, might be lose-lose for both. Every possibility is on the board with that stuff. And listen, if Portland's going to go for it with Dame, cool. I'm good with that. It's what you said, Dave, is so right. They can go so many different ways right now. It's forgive me, I just watched the Spider-Man into the spider across the Spider-Verse. So there's a million different parallel worlds in which this is going to be, I wish I could go visit the ones and take a look and see what's what with all of that stuff and see how all of these things play out. It's fascinating. And the funniest thing is and all of this could be moot if Charlotte takes Scoot Henderson at 2, because that seems like who New Orleans wants. I don't think I make that trade if it's Brandon Miller and I have Ingram, in that sense or whatnot. So it becomes very interesting. The intrigue is very high. I think this is going to be a heavy trade offseason more than a he signed where type offseason. And I think it's going to start on draft day.
Oh, so the NBA invited 19, I believe 19 prospects to the draft. And I wonder if it's because they're anticipating a lot of trades. Who knows where guys are going to go? Because we may get into the teens and teams are saying, hey, that's a guy that might be able to help us. I mean, Miami Heat have the 18th pick in the draft. This is incredible. They just played in the finals. They have the 18th pick. It's extremely valuable. They've got Tyler Hero. They've got stuff they can do. Could see them moving up. There could be a lot of shuffling, but if that number 3 pick is on the table, that is, and Scoot is available, and the guy, oh man.
You know what the 19 guys to the draft made me think of? That's a lot of hats that they got to have on hand just in case they need to.
That screams a Fred Katz story. The hat person at the NBA draft. I want to know. I want to see what the wall looks like of all the hats that they have. And
570 hats, if I'm doing the math right.
Right, we'll see what happens. We're sending Andrew Schleck to the draft, so we'll find out.
one more thing too. That's kind of just we should note about these things too. Just because a guy gets drafted on draft day doesn't necessarily mean, and he doesn't get traded on draft night, doesn't mean he's not going to get traded. We've seen it the past few years. I mean, hell, Walker Kessler got traded before playing a game for Minnesota. The young kid from Cleveland that went to Utah, Ochi Agbaji. Sorry, apologies. Yeah. But we might see some of that stuff too. We're like, hey, teams might take a guy and be all about him. And then July 3rd, all of a sudden they decide like, oh, we can get him for this and that. Like, there's going to be a lot of movement, man. This is going to be a really, really interesting offseason.
I was looking forward to a very boring off season so I could spend a bunch of time on the water. All right, guys. Well, I think this is a great place to wrap up. For Seth Partnow and Mo Dakhil, I'm Dave DeFore, and this has been Nerder, She Wrote, on the Athletic NBA Show.